Not too long ago, Turkey's leader, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, landed in Israel with handshakes and photo ops. But fast forward to today, and he's publicly asking God to make Zionist Israel destroyed and devastated. Erdogan recently even threatened military action against Israel, because that's gone so well for everyone else, right? On the surface, Erdogan's Israel trash talk is all about Gaza and defending the Palestinians. But scratch beneath that thin veneer, and you discover an international grudge match that drags in nearly every country in the Middle East. So, what's really driving Turkey's fight with Israel? Turkey matters. It controls the waterway Russia uses to get warships into the Mediterranean. It decides how many Syrian refugees make it to Europe. It's run by an Islamist party with roots in a movement banned in half the Middle East and Turkey. And it's got a strong man at the helm that's held on to power for 22 years. President Erdogan has reshaped Turkey's political system in his favor. He's waged a war on Turkish democracy. He's survived a coup attempt, and he's overseen one of the worst economic crises in Turkish history. In other words, Erdogan is a pseudo-autocrat trying to hold on to power and dig himself out of a hole. A very deep one. And Israel is his shovel. But Erdogan's story doesn't start with his election in 2003. The roots of his story go back just over 100 years, when the Ottoman Empire, centered in Turkey, collapsed, leaving the region, in political terminology, a wet-hot mess. For over 4 centuries, the Ottoman Empire, ruled by the Turkish Sultan, was a global political, military, religious, and cultural superpower. Just look at how much territory it controlled. Its Turkish Sultan was the head of Sunni Islam, the largest religious denomination in the Muslim world. The Sultan fought a relentless battle against what he saw as infidels, Iranian Shiite Muslims to the east, Christians in the north and west. But then came World War I, and poof, the empire and the Sultan were gone. England and France pulled out their crayons, and a bunch of brand new countries were born. All that was left of the once mighty Ottoman Empire was a secular, liberal democracy called the Republic of Turkey, and an endless stream of dad jokes about a country named Turkey. But the empire is still a force in the region. Across the Middle East, people are drawn to the legacy of a glorious Muslim empire, a mighty sultanate, Muslims unified under one banner, protecting the holy places and fighting barbarians and infidels. And then, finally, in 2003, Erdogan, the head of a Muslim party, came to power. And while at first Erdogan had good relations with Israel, they quickly took a turn for the worse. Many blame the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for that sour relationship, but Erdogan's beef with Israel is only one of a bunch of conflicts and rivalries he's managing as he struggles against infidels and works to rebuild an empire that may or may not strike back. So to really understand Erdogan's feud with Israel, we have to first understand his feuds with other ethnic and religious groups in the Middle East. The dominant religion in the Middle East is Islam, but it has many denominations. The 2 largest are Sunni and Shia, which have been engaged in a bloody struggle since the 7th century, right from the birth of Islam. These terms are going to come up again and again, so I repeat. Sunni, like Sunni, and Shia, like Shira, Princess of Power. On top of the intra-Muslim rivalries, there are dozens of ethnic groups in the region, but 4 major ethnicities are most relevant here. The Arabs, the Turks, the Iranians, and the Kurds. The Kurds, an ancient Sunni Muslim people, are spread across 4 countries, and they think cottage cheese jokes are really lame. More than 20% of Turkey's population is Kurdish, and this minority hasn't had it easy, facing prejudice and persecution. The Kurds of Turkey have a history of armed resistance, and they've tried to form their own independent state. To complicate things even more, Kurds outside of Turkey have recently established autonomous zones in neighboring Syria and Iraq. And those autonomous Kurdish regions have warm relations with Israel, which has supported them politically and militarily. The Turkish rivalry with Iran goes back centuries. Remember, Turkey is Sunni and Iran is Shiite. For centuries, both countries were empires fighting to control the Middle East and the soul of the Islamic world. Today, Iran, ruled by extremist Shia clerics, is stirring things up from Lebanon and Syria to Yemen, using local Shiite minorities as proxies. Closer to home, Iran and Turkey are at odds over brutal clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan. While Iran and Turkey have yet to have direct conflict, the religious tensions and regional disagreements make for a dangerous stalemate. The Israel angle here is that Iran is famous for its opposition to Israel and support for groups like Hamas. That gives Iran and Turkey some common ground, but it may be common ground that just isn't big enough for the both of them. We'll get back to that soon. Turkey's efforts to be top dog also set up a power struggle with other major Sunni countries, struggles heightened by the ethnic divisions between Arabs and Turks. The most populous country in the Middle East, Egypt, with its Sunni Arab majority, was the undisputed leader of the Arab world for much of the 20th century, pretty much until it made peace with Israel. More recently, Sunni Arab Saudi Arabia, with all its oil wealth, has primarily led the Arab world. If non-Arab Turkey wants to run the Sunni show, it'll need to overpower these massive regional forces first. Lucky for Turkey, Saudi Arabia is warming up to Israel. And then there's Syria. Oh, Syria. For decades, a Shia-affiliated authoritarian regime ruled with an iron fist over the majority Sunni country. I say affiliated because the Alawites are actually an offshoot of Shia Islam, but they are affiliated with it, so we're just going to go with that. Then, the Civil War, with over 500,000 casualties and millions of refugees. The Shia dictatorship was supported by Russia, the Shia Islamic Republic of Iran, and its proxy, the Lebanese Shia Hezbollah. On the other side, Syria's majority Sunni Arab population, various Sunni groups like ISIS, and Turkish foe, the Kurds, who were hoping to use the chaos to carve out their own autonomous area. Turkey threw its weight behind the Sunni rebels, who were not only fighting the Shia-affiliated regime, but were also fighting those pesky Kurds. Two birds with one stone, right? And then, everything changed. Recently, a militant Sunni Islamic group, backed by Turkey, drove out the Shia-affiliated dictatorship and took over Syria. Iran and Hezbollah are out. Russian military bases in Syria are in limbo. And there's a lot of questions surrounding ethnic and religious minorities like the Syrian Kurds and Druze, not to mention the former dictator backing minority Shia. But for our purposes here, the biggest takeaway from all of this is that Turkey is now the most important foreign power in Syria, a country that borders Israel, a country with a 700 square mile land dispute with Israel, a country that has technically been in a state of war with Israel for over 75 years. Which brings us finally to Israel. For decades, Turkey had good political, economic, and military ties with Israel, even in the first few years of Erdogan, who visited Israel in 2005. The two countries, both democratic, liberal, Western allies, stood against the radical Islamic Republic of Iran. But the seeds of discord were slowly germinating beneath the surface. Too much? See, Erdogan's party is closely affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. The Brotherhood is a fundamentalist, radical Sunni movement. It was founded in Egypt almost a century ago and has since spread to the entire Muslim world, with branches established almost everywhere, including Europe and North America. Their aim and vision? To establish a Sunni empire. Sound familiar? In most Arab countries, including Egypt and Saudi Arabia, the Brotherhood is banned, labeled a terrorist group, and an enemy of the state. That's also true in Israel, because the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood is, you guessed it, Hamas. So when Erdogan came to power, he had a tricky balancing act. A US, European, and Israel ally with a Muslim Brotherhood heart. It was a balancing act that seemed to work until Hamas overthrew the Palestinian Authority to take control of Gaza. Egypt and Israel imposed a blockade. Remember, the Brotherhood is also banned in Egypt. Most Western countries cut ties with the radical Palestinian group, despite it now being the government for 2 million Palestinians. But Erdogan saw opportunity. He invited Hamas leaders to Turkey, and the fuse was lit underneath Israel-Turkey relations. Since then, Erdogan has taken an increasingly pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel stance. In many ways, the gamble has paid off. By exploiting anti-Israel sentiment, he strengthens local public opinion while deepening his grip on power. By opposing the Jewish state, he presents himself as a champion of Islam, that is, the anti-Semitic, radical, militant, imperialist, jihadist version of Islam. But as a US ally, he can never go too far in his demonization of Israel. Though he's got a lot of wiggle room, what with US allies like Qatar leading the anti-Israel media blitz, and Turkey's important role in the anti-Russian alliance, NATO. By carefully working the anti-Israel and NATO levers, he hopes to grow his standing among European nations while gaining points in internal public opinion and among Muslims in surrounding countries. From Erdogan's perspective, he is a Turkish Muslim champion, standing up to injustice, especially in Palestine. He views himself as the voice of the global Sunni Muslim world, seeking to restore Turkey's role as a political and moral religious leader. Erdogan not only turns against Israel, but he also positions himself against Egypt, the Gulf monarchies, and the Islamic Republic of Iran as a bold, authentic Sunni Islamic voice. In his narrative, Israel is not just a rival state. It's a symbol of oppression, a Western implant, and a threat to Muslim unity. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a bitter, ideological, religious rival, and the Sunni Arab states, many of whom seek peace with Israel, are Ottoman provinces gone astray, betraying their Muslim heritage. But from the Israeli point of view, Erdogan's rhetoric and policies are seen as cynical and dangerous, not driven by concerns for Palestinians, but by political calculations of a power-hungry, radical Islamic despot. For many Israelis, Erdogan's embrace of Hamas, inflammatory speeches, and support for radical Islamist movements like in Syria are not about peace or justice. They're about manipulating public opinion, both in Turkey and in the broader Muslim world. From this perspective, a simmering conflict with Israel is the best way to expand Turkish influence across the Muslim world and, from there, as the Brotherhood's ultimate vision, across the globe. And then there are the narratives of other regional players. For the Islamic Republic of Iran, a radical Shiite theocracy, Erdogan and his Sunni rabble are dire political and religious rivals, standing in the way of the Islamic Republic's attempt to gain political, economic, and cultural dominance in the area and spread Shia Islam worldwide. In the Sunni Arab countries like Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, Erdogan is a wannabe Turkish sultan, undermining their regimes in order to rebuild the Ottoman Empire under the banner of the hated Muslim Brotherhood. The truth is probably somewhere in between all these perspectives. Erdogan's crusade against Israel isn't just about Palestine and Israel. It's also about regional and global power, identity, religion, and legacy. Who gets to define Islam and lead the Muslim world into prosperity and peace, or violent world domination? And which nation shapes the next chapter of the Middle East? Recent unrest in Turkey and the rise of Turkish influence in Syria present a fork in the road. Things could get much worse. Erdogan's increasingly authoritarian rule in Turkey could be strengthened, his regional power expanding from Syria to the rest of the Arab world, threatening Israel and the moderate Sunni regimes, and establishing a radical Islamic superpower. Or we may be approaching a positive turning point. If Turkey's democratic opposition regains strength, restricts Erdogan, or even replaces him, and if the United States steps in with clear leadership, there may be an opening for coordination between Turkey, moderate Arab states, and yes, even Israel. Turkey could very well lay the groundwork for a new era of peace, stability, and prosperity in the Middle East.